You win! Perfect!
Die of Death currently has a total of 19 different civilian abilities, including synergy variants. These abilities are either made for supporting your team, defending yourself, or stunning the killer, and they all have their own scenarios in which they're effective. However, not all of these abilities are on the same level of strength as each other, and some of them are really strong while others are extremely weak. Today, I want to go over every civilian ability currently in the game and rank them from worst to best. I'll rank their payoff, versatility, and consistency out of 10, and then I'll find the average of those scores to get the overall score, which is also out of 10. So let's jump right into it with the weakest ability on this list. At the very bottom of this list, we have Noisemaker Bugle. I've already made an entire video on this ability and why it's so bad. But to sum everything up, this ability is so incredibly weak because it requires you to do 8 skill checks instead of 4, it gives damage resistance instead of a cooldown reduction, it doesn't affect you at all, the effects wear off extremely quickly, and if you get hit while you're using it, you'll take 50% more damage and get ragdolled. Noisemaker Bugle is quite literally just Bugle but worse, which is kind of sad because this is one of the only civilian abilities that can apply damage resistance to your teammates. The payoff of this ability is actually terrible, especially since you have to do double the skill checks compared to regular Bugle. The effects don't even get applied to you, and they wear off so quickly that your team will hardly get any value from them. So I'll give this ability a 2 out of 10 in the payoff category. This ability also doesn't really have that much versatility because you almost always have to use it when you're far away from the killer. So this ability gets a 2 out of 10 in the versatility category. And this ability is pretty consistent at getting you killed. In all seriousness, you have to get incredibly lucky to even slightly help out your team with this ability because the effects are so short. So I'll give this ability a 1 out of 10 in the consistency category. Overall, this ability gets a total score of 1.33 out of 10. At 18th place, we have Pi. This ability is admittedly a pretty neat concept because I personally really enjoy using abilities that travel in an arc. But this ability doesn't do all too much to the killer, and it's absurdly difficult to aim. When you land this ability, the killer will be slowed down by 3 studs per second for 3 seconds, and their abilities, stamina, health, and the timer will be hidden from them. These effects aren't that bad, but the real issue is the control scheme of this ability. To aim Pi, you have to hold down space to increase the distance you'll throw it, and then release space when you want to actually throw. There's a limit to how far you can throw, and there's no way to reduce how far you're aiming. This ability doesn't have the strongest effects on the killer when you land it, but it can be pretty effective mainly because of the short slowdown it gives. So I'll give this ability a 3 out of 10 in the payoff category. Pi is also a really long-ranged ability, so in some situations it can be kind of easy to land it from afar, but there's absolutely no way you can use this ability in a one-on-one chase. So this ability gets a 2 out of 10 in the versatility category. And this might be the hardest ability to land in the game. Sure, there's a red indicator showing you where the Pi will land and the entire arc it will travel in, and the splash radius is pretty generous, but having to hold down space to aim and not being able to undo how far you're aiming makes this ability really difficult to actually land. So I'll give this ability a 1 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Pi gets a total score of 2 out of 10. In 17th place, we have Flashlight. This is another ability that I've already made a video on, and let's just say it's far from being a strong ability. When you use Flashlight on the killer, the slowdown is pretty impactful, but it goes away so quickly that it hardly affects their performance in a chase. And if you daze them, you get healed for 10 HP and get a speed boost, while the killer gets inflicted with dazed for around 15 seconds, which increases how long stun times and ragdoll times are by 25%. However, actually being able to get value out of dazed is pretty difficult because any stunning or ragdolling ability is going to be much more predictable. The effects this ability has on the killer aren't that great, but the speed boost and self-heal are quite useful, so I'll give this ability a 1 out of 10 in the payoff category. Now, this ability is really easy to land, and it's hard to punish even if you don't daze the killer because there's basically zero end lag. Flashlight is pretty decent at stalling out the killer for a few seconds, which can be a necessity and a lifesaver in certain situations. So this ability gets a 4 out of 10 in the versatility category. And as I said, Flashlight is really easy to land, and as long as you don't use it at the worst time imaginable, you are most likely going to daze the killer. But it's going to get a low ranking in the consistency category because of how vulnerable you are while using it. You receive absolutely zero damage resistance while using this ability, and you can't turn it off even when you know you'll get hit by a projectile or some sort of other attack. So this ability gets a 2 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Flashlight gets a total score of 2.33 out of 10. In 16th place, we have Banana Peel. The ragdoll duration of this ability is 2 seconds, so it's pretty rewarding when the killer slips on your peel. But the effect can be even better if they slip at the top of a slope because they'll slide all the way down it, causing them to lose even more pressure and distance. So I'll give this ability a 5 out of 10 in the payoff category. This ability can also allow for a guaranteed stun if a civilian nearby has punch or revolver, which is a devastating combo for the killer. But it also lacks some versatility because there's only a handful of spots on most maps where this ability should be used. So this ability gets a 3 out of 10 in the versatility category. And Banana Peel is just hard to land most of the time because it's so small, unless you place your banana peel in a spot where it's unavoidable. But spots like those have only gotten more rare with the fashionably late update. A lot of the time you'll have to use Banana Peel like it's punch if you actually want the killer to slip on it. But the problem is that you get 0 damage resistance, and it has 2 seconds of wind up and 1 second of end lag. So I'll give this ability a 2 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Banana Peel gets a total score of 3.33 out of 10 points. In 15th place, we have Block. I bet most of you saw this coming, especially since I really don't like block abilities in Roblox ASIMs. Is this ranking biased? Maybe. Block is actually quite rewarding on the off chance that you actually successfully use it. Sure, it doesn't allow you to stun the killer, but it does give you a massive speed boost and it heals you for 10 health. And it locks the killer's abilities for 2 seconds. These effects aren't amazing, but in a one-on-one chase, they can easily stall out the round for a really long time. So I'll give this ability a 5 out of 10 in the payoff category. This ability is also pretty versatile because body blocking is a very useful and viable strategy, especially against badware. So this ability gets a 6 out of 10 in the versatility category. But of course, this is one of the most inconsistent abilities in the entire game. I've already talked about why this is the case for pretty much every block ability extensively, and there are just so many ways things can go wrong when you use abilities like this. The killer can force the block out of you, miss on accident, or the hitboxes can just mess up, which is especially common in the current state of Die of Death. And since the hitboxes are velocity based, the killer can react to you blocking and simply press S on their keyboard, and their hitboxes will be behind them, and that will mess up your block. So I'll give this ability a 1 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Block gets a total of 4 out of 10 points. In 14th place, we have Cloak. This ranking may come as a surprise to some people, considering Cloak was a pretty powerful ability, but I think this ability got significantly weaker with the fashionably late update. You used to be able to sprint while you were invisible, which allowed you to get a lot of distance from the killer, but now you can only walk while you're invisible, which heavily affects the viability of this ability. Sure, now you get a speed boost of 6 while you're invisible, but you still can't regain stamina, and you're still pretty slow all things considered. Successfully tricking the killer with this ability is pretty effective though, and you can still make a decent amount of distance from the killer while invisible, which means you can stall out the round for a good amount of time. So I'll give this ability a 6 out of 10 in the payoff category. Now, Cloak can only be used to help yourself, which wasn't the case before the fashionably late update because you used to be able to go through Artful's walls while invisible, which would also open them up for your teammates. So this ability gets a 5 out of 10 in the versatility category. And Cloak is quite inconsistent now, mainly because you can't sprint while invisible anymore. Even if you do trick the killer at first and manage to go through the entire Cloak duration without getting hit, there's a high chance you'll still end up getting hit anyway because you couldn't get far away enough from the killer in time. It's still entirely possible to use this ability consistently in your average match, but it's much harder than it used to be. So I'll give this ability a 2 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Cloak gets a total of 4.33 out of 10 points. In 13th place, we have Bonus Pad. This is another ability that got significantly nerfed with the fashionably late update, and this time it was a huge nerf. While Cloak used to be a middle of the road ability in terms of strength, Bonus Pad used to be one of, if not the best ability in the entire game. Its payoff hasn't changed all that much though, as you can still speed up your entire team, which allows you to escape some pretty risky situations. So I'll give this ability an 8 out of 10 in the payoff category. However, since Bonus Pad's windup was increased with the fashionably late update, it's a lot harder to find openings where you can place your pad without being punished. So this ability gets a 3 out of 10 in the versatility category. The major difference is its consistency. This ability used to not only have some of the best payoff and versatility in the game, but it was also absurdly consistent. Before this most recent update, the killer couldn't do anything to the bonus pad once it was placed down, meaning that the entire civilian team could just continue to loop around one spot where the bonus pad was located until it fully dissipated. But now, the killer can actually destroy bonus pads. A single bonus pad has only 18 health, meaning that every killer except for Harkin when she's in her calm state can destroy it in one hit. Sure, this ability's cooldown was reduced from 65 seconds to 45 seconds, so it's a lot easier to place down consistently, but at the same time, it's going to get destroyed almost instantly every time you place one down. So I'll give this ability a 3 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that bonus pad gets a total score of 4.67 out of 10 points. In 12th place, we have Reroll. I know some people are going to get upset at this ranking because a lot of people really like this ability, but I think some people tend to confuse an ability's fun factor for its actual strength. Don't get me wrong, I find this ability very fun to use as well, but I also can acknowledge that it has some glaring weaknesses. But I do have to say this ability can be pretty rewarding when it actually works out in your favor. Sure, you can get some pretty lame abilities like Pie or Banana Peel, but you can also get amazing abilities such as Caretaker or Bugle, without any of the stat downgrades, mind you. This is huge because you can use Caretaker to heal your teammates without being as fragile, and then you can reroll again for a powerful Sentinel ability like Revolver or Punch. So I'll give this ability a 5 out of 10 in the payoff category. And obviously, this is the most versatile ability in the entire game. You can have good self-sustain at one point in the match, and then at another point in the match you can heal your teammates or stun the killer. With good luck, you can do basically everything for your team. So this ability gets a 10 out of 10 in the versatility category. However, I shouldn't have to explain why Reroll is one of the most inconsistent abilities in the game. Not only can you end up with really bad abilities in general, but you can also end up with abilities that don't fit the situation at all. There's also a very considerable amount of risk when you want to reroll, because you're almost completely stationary for about 3 whole seconds, and you have to reroll every time you use the ability in the slot in question. So I'll give this ability a 1 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that reroll gets a total of 5.33 out of 10 points. In 11th place, we have Dash. This is yet another ability that was significantly nerfed with the fashionably late update. Dash now has 2 functions. Not only can it be used as a sudden burst of movement, but it can also be used to knock back the killer. Using Dash for mobility is no longer as rewarding as it used to be, because if you use the ability while not having enough stamina for its 30 stamina cost, you'll be ragdolled during the dash. And the best way to use this ability used to be using it while you had almost 0 stamina, because there was no penalty for doing so. It's now more optimal to push the killer back with this ability, because it has a decent amount of knockback. So I'll give this ability a 5 out of 10 in the payoff category. Since using dash as a mobility tool is no longer as viable as it used to be, its versatility has definitely taken a hit from that. But the knockback can be quite versatile at the same time. It may not seem like much in certain situations, but it can really make a difference and leave an opening for either a heal or a stun. So this ability gets a 5 out of 10 in the versatility category. And dash is quite consistent as well, as it's pretty easy to land, but its 30 stamina cost is nothing to ignore. Using this at the wrong time, whether it's for knocking back the killer or mobility, can be a death sentence for you, since it can not only cause you to be ragdolled, but it can also put you at a major stamina disadvantage if you use it at the wrong time and have poor stamina management. So I'll give this ability a 7 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that dash gets a total of 5.67 out of 10 points. In 10th place, we have Hot Dog, and this is where we get to the abilities I consider to be actually strong, which may come as a shock to some people considering we're still pretty low on the list, which really goes to show how many strong abilities are currently in the game. I don't have too much to say about Hot Dog because it's just a really solid ability that's very good for body blocking. Even if you only use it selfishly, it's still a really good self-heal that can negate an entire M1. So I'll give this ability a 6 out of 10 in the payoff category. Its versatility is actually pretty solid considering how much it can help out your team and you. Body blocking is an extremely viable strategy currently in Die of Death, and this is one of the better abilities for body blocking. So this ability gets a 5 out of 10 in the versatility category. Hot Dog's consistency is also really solid, especially since it no longer lowers your max stamina when you use it, and it only increases the size of your hurt box, which really isn't that big of a deal. So I'll give this ability a 7 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Hot Dog gets a total of 6 out of 10 points. In 9th place, we have Bugle. Bugle is a really strong support ability that can double the speed of ability cooldowns for the entire civilian team, which is a really big deal, especially when you consider some of the strongest abilities currently in the game have already pretty short cooldowns. So I'll give this ability an 8 out of 10 in the payoff category. Bugle is also extremely versatile, as it can buff as many people as you want. And sure, you won't always be able to buff everyone on your team, but it's still impossible to ignore that it has that potential and that it even affects you. It doesn't affect the Bugle ability itself, but it affects your other ability. So this ability gets a 7 out of 10 in the versatility category. However, Bugle takes 6 entire seconds to use, which means it can only be used at really specific times. Otherwise, the killer will receive a really easy kill due to how defenseless you are when you use this ability. So I'll give this ability a 4 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Bugle gets a total score of 6.33 out of 10. In 8th place, we have Sweet Tooth's version of Hot Dog. Obviously, this ability is incredibly similar to base Hot Dog, so I'll keep things brief. Instead of healing you by 15 HP, increasing your hurt box size, and increasing your max health by 5, Sweet Tooth's version of Hot Dog heals you for 30 HP, still increases your hurt box size, and decreases your total health by 7. That maximum health decrease may seem like a lot, but if you don't have 30 health missing, you'll stop eating and less of your maximum health will be removed. I think this ability is practically a direct upgrade to base Hot Dog. Of course, it has its own downsides, but overall I think it's a lot better considering how big of a deal a 30 HP self-heal is. So I'll give this ability an 8 out of 10 in the payoff category, a 6 out of 10 in the versatility category, and a 6 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Sweet Tooth Hot Dog gets a total of 6.67 out of 10 points. In 7th place, we have Taunt. Taunt is a really strong support ability that's very proficient in disrupting chases and changing the killer's focus to be on you. Successfully using this ability is not only very rewarding for you, but also your team, since most killers will want to attack you while they're enraged from your taunt. So I'll give this ability a 7 out of 10 in the payoff category. Taunt can also be used in many different situations, as it's pretty easy to land. And like I said, it's very helpful for not only yourself, but your team when used correctly. So this ability gets an 8 out of 10 in the versatility category. However, there's quite a bit of a risk when it comes to using taunt because of the enraged status effect the killer gets when you taunt them. Taking 50% more damage and being ragdolled from any attack is nothing to scoff at, especially since it lasts for around 14 seconds after you taunt the killer. But it's still pretty easy to make a lot of distance from the killer after taunting them. So in the right situations, you won't have to worry about this status effect. So I'll give this ability a 6 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that taunt gets a total of 7 out of 10 points. In 6th place, we have Punch. This is a really basic ability that didn't change all too much with the fashionably late update, so this is another section I'll keep brief. Punch has the longest stun time in the entire game. I don't think I need to explain why a 3-second stun is absolutely a big deal for the killer and your team. So I'll give this ability a 10 out of 10 in the payoff category. Punch is mainly good for stunning the killer while in a one-on-one chase, but there are some opportunities where you can use it to help out a teammate who's in a chase. It's a lot less reliable than a revolver in this aspect, but it still has some cases where it can be used while the killer isn't chasing you. So this ability gets a 7 out of 10 in the versatility category. Punch is a pretty reactable ability though, because its windup is fairly long and it has a recognizable sound cue. You have to plan ahead a lot when you want to use this ability, otherwise the killer will be able to see your punch coming from a mile away. So I'll give this ability a 5 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Punch gets a total of 7.33 out of 10 points. In 5th place, we have Adrenaline. This used to be one of the worst abilities in the entire game before the fashionably late update. But now, not only is it a lot stronger, but it can also help out your team instead of only being able to help out you. There's a small radius around you for the entire duration of your speed boost, and if one of your teammates ends up in this radius, they'll receive a speed boost as well. And there's no limit to how many people you can speed up at a time. Using this ability successfully stalls out the round for a really long time, and it can also help out your team a lot. So I'll give this ability an 8 out of 10 in the payoff category. Adrenaline is also a lot more versatile now, considering you can buff your entire team with one use of the ability and also get out of a chase. So this ability gets a 7 out of 10 in the versatility category. But of course, Adrenaline still has its infamous end lag after the speed boost runs out, but you can actually slightly move after the boost now. Sure, you can't sprint and you're slowed down by 4 studs per second, but it's still better than not being able to move at all. So I'll give this ability an 8 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Adrenaline gets a total of 7.67 out of 10 points. In 4th place, we have Love Shot Revolver. This ability doesn't actually stun the killer, and instead it slows them down and locks their abilities. It also fires 3 bullets at a time instead of just 1. The real selling point of this ability is the fact that every time you land one of your bullets, you'll heal yourself and others around you by 7 HP. Landing all 3 of your shots is extremely helpful for you and any teammate that's around you, and while the killer doesn't get slowed down by that much with every bullet, their abilities are still locked for quite some time, even if only 1 bullet lands. So I'll give this ability an 8 out of 10 in the payoff category. Love Shot Revolver also has amazing versatility, because it can stall out the killer, heal you, and heal your teammates. So this ability gets a 9 out of 10 in the versatility category. Although, landing this ability can be pretty difficult because its windup is a lot more reactable than base revolvers, and landing all 3 shots is a lot harder to do than just 1. So I'll give this ability a 7 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Love Shot Revolver gets a total of 8 out of 10 points. In 3rd place, we have Revolver. This is another ability that didn't really change with the fashionably late update, other than the fact that it no longer reduces your max stamina at all. This is huge because that was probably this ability's biggest weakness. Landing your shot with Revolver isn't as rewarding as Punch, but it's still a 2-second stun, which can make a pretty big difference even if you're in a one-on-one chase with the killer. So I'll give this ability an 8 out of 10 in the payoff category. category. Revolver is a lot more versatile than Punch because of how good it is at interrupting a chase that you're not in. So this ability gets a 9 out of 10 in the versatility category. Revolver's consistency is also a lot more solid than Punch's is because it can be easy to snipe the killer from a distance, and it can even be easy to shoot them up close with the generous splash radius. So I'll give this ability an 8 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Revolver gets a total of 8.33 out of 10 points. In second place, we have Care Pad. Even though this isn't the best ability in the game anymore, it's still really close in my eyes. Everybody knows how strong Care Pad is, and even though it can typically be destroyed in one hit, and I'm pretty sure it heals slower than it used to, it's still a really strong ability nonetheless. What's even better is the fact that Bonus Pad's cooldown is only 45 seconds now, which makes Care Pad even better because it can be placed down more frequently. Anyways, I'll give this ability a 10 out of 10 in the payoff category, a 10 out of 10 in the versatility category, and a 7 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Care Pad gets a total of 9 out of 10 points. And in first place, the best civilian ability in the game, we have Caretaker. I think a lot of people saw this coming, especially since I've stated numerous times that this ability is the best in the game in my previous videos. This is another ability that basically everyone understands is really strong, and it only got even stronger with the fashionably late update, because before this update you had to sprint to be able to move while using this ability, but now you don't have to, which makes this ability a lot more reliable for healing people who are in a chase. There are so many things that make this ability as strong as it is. It can heal as many civilians at once as possible, it has a short cooldown of only 30 seconds, it's super easy to land, it can heal people mid-chase, and it's also the main healing ability of the game, which automatically makes it an essential ability. So, I'll give this ability a 10 out of 10 in the payoff category, a 10 out of 10 in the versatility category, and an 8 out of 10 in the consistency category, which means that Caretaker gets a total of 9.33 out of 10 points. In conclusion, Die of Death's civilian abilities are a lot more balanced than they used to be. Before the fashionably late update, there were a lot of abilities that were just really weak, and a handful of abilities that were absurdly overpowered. Adrenaline, Hot Dog, and Taunt were really weak abilities that had a higher chance of getting you killed if you used them than if you didn't. Dash, Care Pad, and especially Bonus Pad were absurdly broken and overpowered, and they made the killer's life miserable. It was to the point where it was hard to believe those two groups of abilities were even in the same game. Thankfully, they're quite balanced now, and there aren't any abilities that are overpowered anymore. There are still a few abilities that are quite weak, but we still can't ignore how much the balancing has improved. However, at the end of the day, these are just my rankings and my opinions, so let me know how you guys would rank these abilities in the comments. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.